Hello and good evening. My name is Greg Piskazup, and I'm joined here by James Adams. And this is first of our interviews with our guest speakers that will join us on Asbiro Investors Meeting on the 30th of September. And I would like to introduce James, who is renowned investor and developer, one of our speakers, as I just mentioned, on our event. James, we've got audience here, and we would like to share with them who you are, what do you do, and perhaps why would they come and listen what you've got to say. So if you could tell us briefly about yourself, introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, sure thing. Good to be here, Greg. Thanks for having me. My name's James Adams. My company's called Fairholm. I'm a property developer, investor, and landlord based in Bristol in the West Country. And I've been in property for about 9 years, full-time for 4 years. Previously to being involved in property, running my own company, I was a full-time teacher. So my background's in economics and had various jobs in schools as a head of department and a manager. And when I originally started out in property, I guess it was a sideline. It's kind of everyone's favorite sideline, I think. So I was no different in that respect. And then, 4 years ago, decided to, really change careers, I suppose, and give my time and effort full time to towards property and growing my business, growing my brand, and delivering homes, good quality homes for people to live in, really. So that's kind of where I'm at the minute, professionally, I suppose.
Okay. Well, some people might not know it yet, but James lives in Bristol, and he started his own developers network. James, could you tell our audience about what it is that what it is TDN?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, the Developers Network Bristol, I launched in July last year. So that's in collaboration with Whitebox, which some people might know. They're a property development company based over in Northampton. We're one of, I think there's about 7 nationally now. So there's one in London, Birmingham, Manchester, Kent, Essex, I believe, Manchester. So we've got a few around the country, and I run the Bristol sort of chapter of that networking event. So we meet monthly. The aim is to inspire and support small scale developers locally. And we do that through regular meetups, an array of excellent speakers, try to enlighten people about the things that can go wrong, so that people don't, make the mistakes, hopefully. Apart from anything else, really, it's a community. So, property, if you're, particularly if you're doing it sort of on your own, which many people do, perhaps part-time, perhaps full-time, it can be a bit of a lonely business. It certainly has its stressful moments. Not everything goes smoothly all the time, and so I think having that community there is really important, and it's been something I've really enjoyed doing. Met a lot of very good people doing it. For purely selfish reasons, I kind of want to get to know everybody in Bristol property, whether that be other developers or other landlords, investors, but also all the professions that surround that you need in order to pull things together, from engineers to people in the trades and solicitors and everything in between. So it's been good for me. I think there's a good community there that have come together. People seem to enjoy it. So it's something that is good and very much sort of sits alongside what I do professionally.
So we will have a lot of different variants of people watching this interview live or rewatching it later. And I believe a lot of people would ask themselves what is the market trends at the moment. So if you could tell us, what are you excited about, or maybe not, currently on what's happening on the market? What's your opinion about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think 2023 has been an interesting. 2022 was quite interesting as well for a few reasons. I guess I came into the year thinking that possibly build costs were obviously a major issue in 2022. A lot of that driven through input costs, and that was making development and property, if you're adding value and doing work, more difficult because everything was costing a lot more to do, and that was affecting margin. And a lot of deals just wouldn't stack up with the way that build costs were, and build costs haven't come down. But I think I came into the year thinking, the build cost inflation side of things might make things a bit easier. But obviously we had the mini budget at the end in September 22, and everything that's done to debt markets, and rates have now made things a lot more difficult. So both on the way in for raising finance is trickier of all different types because interest rates are higher, but also on exit because buyers, certainly at the interest rates we're seeing now, demand is definitely dampened. So I sold some new build properties earlier in the year, and Q1 of this year there was a bounce, and things were pretty buoyant. I think now, certainly in Bristol, which is where I'm most familiar with in terms of trends, things are a little bit more subdued. Probably buyers, maybe there's some better deals to be had out there if you can find some motivated sellers. Probably if people don't need to sell, they would think twice about it because they don't want to take a haircut on the price. So transaction volume, as you'd expect, is going down. But there are undoubtedly opportunities out there, and it's as always. I think it's about knowing what a good deal looks like for you and knowing what you're trying to achieve, and a lot of different deals, and having that follow up, because a deal that an offer that you might have made earlier in the year, which a seller wasn't so enamored with, they might have a different view on it now, especially if they're leveraged and they're coming off mortgage deals. They might be thinking that they're actually better off selling a rental property to which you potentially, as the developer landlord, can add value. So it's not an easy market. Probably
a lot of deals is falling through now at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think if deals were agreed at people were buying things to hold, they might have done their numbers based on rates where they might have been and not stress tested them so much. If the deal was agreed 4 or 5 months ago, whatever it might have been, these things take a while to work their way through, and people are probably looking at it now thinking, oh, I'm not sure it quite works maybe at that level. And so certainly there are probably deals certainly wobbling and some falling through. So yeah, it's not an easy market, as always. I think knowing what your exits are, stress testing, being conservative, having a good margin in things, all of those things still apply. And making sure you've got a few ways out, I think, with deals that you're getting into, because it's all very well to get a deal, but getting out of it is the important thing, whether that's refinance or sales.
Would you say, should we be worried about the higher borrowing costs and the drop in mortgage approvals? Should we be worried about housing market stability? What's how do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, I think with when you think of that, I mean, just sort of with my economist hat on, I suppose. When you think of the housing market, is quite a blobby way of thinking about it, because if you get national indices, that's across a whole range of different markets from northeast, southwest, and it's not that sort of disaggregated down into regions and different property types. So in London, you'd expect now that there's probably going to be significant, the prices will be coming off quite a bit because of that where they're at. They're obviously at a very high level. I think Bristol, where we are, things that are priced correctly, and things that are perhaps houses that are perhaps at the cheaper end of the market are probably holding up quite well, and perhaps those bits of the market where buyers are not so interest sensitive, they're probably holding up reasonably as well. So, I mean, in terms of the whole, that kind of Armageddon, like, is there going to be a huge housing crash? I mean, my own personal feeling on it, and just from hearing what other people who are more clued up than I am on these things, I think there probably is a tipping point there, where rates, if they were to get significantly more, there might be a lot more distress there.
Stop you there, but that's very interesting, because obviously, although the market, the mortgage approvals are down, but house prices haven't really fallen that much, well, according to reports. So that's a bit puzzling, because what do you think? This means that housing to the to the demand as we thought?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that the house prices, they're not just driven by interest rates. There's other variables there that affecting prices. So prices are down, and they'll be down in some areas more than others. But fundamentally, there isn't enough places for people to live. So house prices are probably holding up fairly well for that reason.
Experiencing.
So I think we just had a technical issue there. So we've lost Greg. Hopefully he's going to pop back any minute. You're back.
James, hello.
Hi.
Hi. Sorry, it seems like I'm not sure what happened there. Whether it's me or whatever the nature of the technical, advance and wonders. So thank you for staying with me. I see that you've changed your location.
Just in case it was me, Greg, I've relocated. So yeah.
Thank you so much. I just made sure that I've got good reception. So yeah, that was very interesting. Thank you. And James, for other audience, for people who are starting in the property, they might want to find out about what tools and what it is that you are using or you are recommending them to use if they would like to find out more about how to invest, where to invest, how to start.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of technology or software and that sort of thing. Yeah, so I mean, I think when you're starting out, perhaps you want to do things that are relatively low cost but have high impact, and quite easy to use. I mean, I'm quite a big fan of property data. I like it. I don't think I use it, to its full capacity. It does quite a lot of things, really, but it's very, very cost effective. I think it's probably £30 a month, something like that. Some of the other kind of software platforms that you can use are quite expensive. So if it's something you're doing as a sideline and you want to keep your costs down, I think property data is good because it's very good for valuations, very good for comps, gives you an idea what's happening in your particular market for particular house type. So that's a very useful tool. I'm a big fan of Searchland. Is very useful for me in development because it's more bigger picture, using filters on land to understand different planning areas, planning constraints, and that sort of thing. But property data is a really useful one, and as I say, it's cost effective.
Okay, and thank you so much. So in the current market, using these tools, and what opportunities and challenges we might have. We talked briefly about the interest rates and the falling mortgage approvals. So are there any opportunities? Are there any challenges? Should we invest in the properties at all? What's your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing we've just done it because, as well as looking for development sites for new build and conversions, we invest in HMOs. We buy properties to convert into HMOs, and finding those kind of tired landlords who've got tired properties, I think that's a good area to sort of try and exploit, and particularly with EPC regulations, those sort of software tools are good for sort of searching for properties which are perhaps F and G EPC rated, pretty soon or already can't legally be rented out. To upgrade them can be very expensive. I think some, landlords are often accidental landlords. They don't necessarily know about the fabric of the building and that type of stuff. And so the thought of upgrading properties is both very expensive and people don't know how to do it. So finding those sorts of opportunities, I think there's definitely going to be, a lot of scope to add value there and to find those types of properties that aren't really up to scratch. So that would that's something that we're definitely doing currently as a way of sort of trying to find opportunities in the market, off market, let's say.
And you mentioned that one of your favorite investment strategy would be a HMO.
Yeah.
And local to Bristol, we've just been, I've just heard news that Bristol Council is introducing an Article 4 throughout the city-wide. Have you heard about it?
I haven't. That's the first I've heard, but it doesn't surprise me.
So this is what they introduced. How do you think, how this will impact the investments going forward?
Yeah, I mean, so we've got some investments.
Article 4, the additional licensing for HMO.
Additional licensing, yeah. So, I mean, obviously two slightly different things. Article 4 is planning, the additional licensing is a licensing, and they have obviously slightly different effects. Personally, I think licensing is a good thing because it professionalizes the sector. All of our properties pretty much are licensable, so it doesn't really change what we do. It's always something I've been used to doing. There's probably a lot of properties out there that maybe aren't up to scratch and maybe don't meet standards. So I think that's a good thing for bringing up standards and sort of professionalizing things. For landlords, obviously, potentially it's an extra cost, both in terms of the licensing, but then also any upgrades that you potentially have to make in terms of things like fire safety, maybe fire doors, and that sort of thing. So it adds another layer of compliance. The general sort of system of licensing, I think nationwide, is a little bit of a dog's dinner, if I'm honest, though, because you've got all the different authorities doing all different things, and in nowhere is that more true than in London, where you've got one borough that does one thing and one borough that does another, and they have their own additional licensing requirements. So it can be quite a confusing thing, I suppose, if you're an investor and you're looking in particular areas. And that's why I guess why local knowledge really matters, because those peculiarities of your area. On the Article 4 point, we know why local authorities bring it in, because they're worried about proliferation of HMOs and a loss of normal housing stock of dwelling houses. And so you can understand why it's introduced. In my experience, and I think it's probably true in other areas, it's tended to push up the prices of those properties, that could be converted or that potentially have been used as multiply let properties before. So it has pros and cons to it, because potentially if you're somebody that owns a house in an area that's an Article 4 and it's a dwelling house, if you've got a lot of HMOs around you, you can't really necessarily sell your house as a dwelling house or an HMO. So it can be tricky. You get some unintended consequences there, but overall, licensing, I don't see it as a threat, particularly. I think it's right that landlords should, have good standards in their housing.
We should provide a high standard of living, accommodation for our tenants, and I totally agree with you. Yeah. And just keeping that in mind, so the licensing is there for us and all the genuine landlords. We did have a bad name for, maybe we still have for years. Landlords have been, renowned for HMOs and students' accommodation. But I want to ask a question more over to your personal insight. So, cost of living is rising. The mortgage rate the mortgage rates are going up. The approvals falling down. What is the most rewarding part of being a property investor or developer in your case?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, for me, you hope that because you're running a business, you hope that there's going to be financial reward in what you do. And that's no difference to if you're running a plumbing business, an electrical business, or a property business, or any other type of business, because that's the reward for entrepreneurship. For me, really, I think it's the process of adding value to property that I find most rewarding. So going back to the first property that I bought back in 2014, it was an absolute, it was a hellhole when I bought it. And it was a lot of fun transforming it and making it into something that, you can be proud of. and that your tenants, if you're renting properties out, are going to really enjoy living in. And it doesn't really change. I think even when you're looking at more complex projects, you're trying to breathe new life into buildings, and make them good spaces to live in, perhaps repurposing buildings. And so I think that's the bit, actually, the creative element of property development and adding value is personally what I enjoy about it. I know other investors like, the thrill of doing a deal, and perhaps some are more perhaps money motivated than others. And, we're all different in that respect. But for me, I really enjoy the process of sort of taking something that's very ugly, but ultimately making it something nice.
Well, yes, sure. And I would like to ask you to give us maybe one tip, your personal golden nugget, because for our audience, James is going to be one of our speakers at the event, 30th of September, Radisson Red Hotel, London Heathrow. If you'd like some more information, please follow the links in our description. But James has been very successful in his investment journey and development. And we would like to ask James if he could give one golden nugget today, something that each and every one of our our audience from our audience could perhaps use. So what it would be, James?
I mean, I think there's probably not one thing, and you're not always going to get everything right as far as buying projects and investing goes. I think it's worth caveating that. But I think what you can do is you can plan thoroughly, and you can think carefully about what it is you're doing, and that might include understanding your exits well. It might be knowing the area well and the property type that you're investing in. And if you're doing development, it's really, in some ways, it's one big checklist of things that you have to go through, and you have to be kind of fairly organized. I think something that I took from my teaching career into property is that I'm quite an organized person, like to be organized, like to think things through, and that's probably helped. And but at the same time, you don't overanalyze, because you've got to get things done. But I think thinking really clearly about what you're doing, making sure you're planning properly, trying to make sure you've got your bases covered, and considering your exit, won't do you any harm, let's say.
Absolutely, overanalyze. I'm guilty of it. I've just been trying to stress the numbers to the point that none of the deal worked.
And somebody's bought it. It's gone.
You're up to you. We've got a question in the audience, if you wouldn't mind. So, when the Article 4 is coming to Bristol, so actually, it's not Article 4, is additional licensing. But the question is, are the projects that are already being set up will have to comply? So I believe the project that's already been set up, they've had the permission, so they've got the permission and licensing, then planning. They should be safe. What's your opinion on that, James?
Yeah, so again, two separate issues about licensing and planning. So on the Article 4 point, you obviously with HMOs, you have permitted development rights under Class L to convert a dwelling house into a small HMO, so up to 6 bedrooms. So probably what you would have to do if an Article 4 was coming in would be get a certificate of lawfulness for that to be the case, which your lender will probably want anyway, both on the way in, if you're using bridging, for example, but then also when you're refinancing on the way out. And then that certificate of lawfulness, that lawful use has to be executed. So you'd have to have sort of 3 sharers living in the house, 3 or more sharers living in the house prior to the Article 4 coming in. As far as licensing goes, my experience of it there, we've got property in London that introduced additional licensing. And I applied for the license, 7 or 8 months ago, and have heard nothing since. And it depends on what their requirements are. So you might have to submit floor plans, for example, maybe what your fire detection equipment is, and you pay the license fee. And then at some point, the authority will give you some feedback and potentially do an inspection. So I think with licensing, it's the case that you need to be compliant, and then the application process can often take quite a while. So I think as long as you're compliant and you've applied, even with compulsory licensing, that's normally acceptable to the local authority.
Okay, well, I hope we answered the questions. If anyone from our audience have any questions, please put them in the comments, and if we pick them up in the duration of this interview, we'll answer them as best as we can. And upcoming events, and if we would like to give like a teaser to some of our audience here today, and whoever will be watching this after the live event, the live interview, what investor, what people who comes to our event could expect to learn even further from you. So what it is that you would be covering during our event. So if you could give a little teaser to our audience, please.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I'm gonna talk a bit about, obviously I've told you a bit about what my background was. I'm gonna give a bit of an insight into changing your career, because I think there's a lot of people often in property circles who potentially don't enjoy their job or the day job, and they want to get into let's say property full time.
Yes.
That's something that people kind of aspire to. Say I'm on my second career now, and so I can give a bit of an insight into what the challenges of that are, particularly around mindset, because it's certainly something that you have to be quite brave to do. So very happy to talk a bit about that, and then also my experience with HMOs, which is quite a popular strategy for people. We've developed HMOs inside an Article 4 area, so often people have the perception that you can't do HMOs inside Article 4s, which you can, but through a number of routes, both through full planning and retrospective planning. Talk a bit, give a case study of one of the ones that we've done. We've got quite a few student HMOs, so can sort of give some numbers on that and how that, what our thinking was when we developed those in terms of the space and the construction side. And then also, we've transitioned into doing, bigger developments and done ground up development and new build, and can sort of give people a bit of an idea about what the differences are between, perhaps converting a 3-bed house into a 6 versus building, houses out of the ground, and sort of what our experiences there was, and also just financially how they differ, how you fund them differently, and ultimately sort of what potentially your returns look like at the exit.
Okay, so thank you, James. So for all our audience, if you're watching this live today, Thursday, 5:20, this event is on September the 30th, and it's in London. You can find the details just below this video and link to purchase the tickets. And we would like to also let know all our audience that if you come and watch James at this event, if you're tired of your existing job and if you want to change something, and if you think that the properties are not not the career to pursue, well, full time, it's maybe not the not the right saying. But if you're tired of your existing job and you would like to do something about it, please come and join us. And Jane has something special for you. If you purchase the tickets and you use the discount code James10 to get 10% discount, we will, as event organizers, we will match the 10% the discount, and we will put this additional 10% towards any charity that James will choose. So we will help. So it's going to a great cause, and we just want to give back to the community. All we want to do is inspire people to go out there, make change, and just really pursue the dreams. So never stop learning, always chase your dreams. That's my favorite saying. And James is going to help us. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We'll try to answer them. Can't wait to learn new stuff from James. Thank you, Alexandra. All the details in the link, and final words of advice from you, James, before we finish this interview.
I would say if you're looking at deals, make sure you're stress testing them. Make sure you know what a good deal looks like, and just keep going forward. That's all you can do.
if you want to know what a good deal looks like, please join us at 30th of September in London. And if you have any questions, please leave the comments in the chat. The chat will stay open, and the team will answer any questions you may have. I'd like to thank James for your time. Thank you very much for for a sneak peek into your world of of developing and investing. And truly, if you want to find out more, please join us. And that's it from me today. James, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Greg. No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.